Hey everybody, it's Bust with Battles with Bust number 476, and today we're doing battle with Ashe LeBlanc. And so, Ashe LeBlanc, this is one of these decks like Scouts that we covered off on our previous video, to where it never really takes hold within the first couple weeks of the meta, but once everybody's kind of gotten over the hype, they've gotten over the shiny new toys that are available to you in the new set, decks like this are able to kind of start to resurface and resurge a little bit. And so, the main difference between Ashe LeBlanc and the Scouts deck that we covered off in the previous video is Ashe LeBlanc runs into a lot of problems with Mystic Shot. As you can imagine, having a deck trying to make a lot of usage out of 2 health champions like LeBlanc and then 1 health attackers like Trifari and Glory Seeker really struggles in the meta, to where Mystic Shot is, tried and true through pretty much every deck running around. But as we come out and start to approach the best of 3 season, this is a place to where we maybe just get to ban out our opponent's strongest Mystic Shot deck and allow this deck the opportunity to play against some of its better matchups. Now, some of Ashe LeBlanc's better matchups are where I start to get pretty excited about this with the upcoming Runeterra Open, in the sense that it's so good against all of the non-interactive mid-range decks. And so the Warden of the Tribes decks that are the real highlight of the meta right now get absolutely trucked by Ashe LeBlanc. And now some of the third decks of the lineups that are starting to make their way forth also have a lot of problems with Ashe LeBlanc. Things like Jax Ornn aren't super happy to play it. Anything trying to make usage out of cards like Pantheon aren't happy to play against this. And so it's one of these decks that I'm becoming more and more interested in playing as the Open approaches. Now, the next thing that was interesting to me with Ashe LeBlanc and doing a little bit of research on the deck and looking at the deck lists that are going around is everybody out there is playing a bunch of garbage deck lists. Like, I'm sorry if you're one of the people on Runeterra.ar that are having your decks featured, your deck's garbage. That's just easy to say. You can look at it right away and see that. I don't know if people just didn't get the memo that Glacial Saurion has been printed. Maybe they haven't played against Warden of the Tribes this season, but it turns out having a 5-attack Overwhelm unit that draws a card and buffs the rest of your units for the game is pretty good. This card belongs in your Ashe LeBlanc deck. Some of the other things I've been seeing are there's a lot of people playing the 3-cost Trifarian that can't block. Get that nonsense out of your deck. We're not playing that garbage. And then they're starting to see a little bit of a rise and resurgence of things like Legion Marauders. That deck is terrible as well. And so I think we're starting to get ourselves into a much better place with Ashe LeBlanc than you're seeing out of those deck lists there. Not to toot my own horn, but I think we're getting it much, much closer. And so what really kind of differentiates our deck from what those other ones are trying to do is we have a little bit of this unit boosting aspect to it. So we have the Omen Hawk and the Darkened Spear to hopefully boost up some of our bigger units. And then once the units we're specifically looking to kind of target here are going to be the Innovative Blacksmith, which helps with a lot of our very bad matchups, in the sense of something like Annie or something like Pirates. Getting 3 and 4 health gain out of those matchups is quite huge, but if you're able to spike a +1/+1 onto the Innovative Blacksmith, it's very easy to get it up to 5 attack and have it relevant for all the remainder of your other cards. Same thing applies to the Trifarian Assessor. This is not a particularly exciting card if it's not drawing you any cards, but a single +1/+1 onto the Assessor will allow it to draw a card off of itself as soon as it comes into play, and then it's very easy to see some of the other 5-attack units running around on board. The other card that we're including in here that you don't see too frequently is going to be Frostcoat Cub. This is a card that just all around does everything we need within this deck, whether or not that is putting a Darkened Spear on it on turn 3 and being able to attack, putting it down in the early game just as a blocker against those kind of Annie decks that give us problems, having a subtype for the likes of Glacial Saurion to activate its ability, and then of course being able to flip into the big dog mode and have that late game overwhelmer that we need. And so very happy with the addition of cards like that. And then the last 2 things we want to kind of call out are the Scholarly Pioneer, one of the new additions in this format. Quite happy with the Pioneer, another one of these cards that is spectacular if it gets a single +1/+1, now able to take down 3 health units. But these exploration things are super relevant in this format as well, whether or not it's blowing up an equipment, blowing up a landmark, or the most common thing we do in Quicksand, I've ultimately been quite happy with the Scholarly Pioneer. The last kind of combo to call out within this deck is the things that you can do with LeBlanc in terms of mirror image. We have a strong collection of units that we can do with that. Incisive Tactician is the #1 go-to target, giving you the infinite rallies, but it's oftentimes just good enough to be copying a Glacial Saurion, which people aren't playing for some reason, or copying the big dog off of the Frostcoat Cub. Now, the last thing I kind of want to call out about this deck before we jump into the gameplay is how relevant are your Ashe flips going to be, and how much devotion to this Ashe Frostbite thing are you really going to put forth? Because you're never going to find a game to where you play Ashe on turn 4, you get an attack, you get to attack again on turn 6, and she doesn't get blocked or killed, and then she gets to attack for the lethal on turn 8. Those games are so super far between that you can't really count on that strategy to actually work. But the thing you can kind of count on is what is the most premium flip that we can get with Ashe, and how can we pull that off? And so the big kind of combo play that you always look for this Ashe-based deck is going to be an attack with Ashe into a Harsh Winds, right? So you're going to Frostbite their biggest unit off of the Ashe attack. The Harsh Winds will copy onto their other 2 big units. Ashe will now flip. Those 3 units can't block, and ideally, that's going to be enough to come in and close out the game. And so with that, you need 2. Right, we need 2 flash freezes before the Harsh Winds turn, and that's much, much easier to do once you get it up into that idea. And so we have started to include a little bit more in terms of the flash freezes that a lot of the decks play. You don't always see the usage of Iceveil Archer. You don't always see the 3 copies of Brittle Steel, but I'm pretty intent that on turn 6, turn 7, I want to be able to flip Ashe off of a Harsh Winds, and I don't want to run into these games to where she's just a 5-power attacker that, weakens the strongest enemy's unit and then just gets blocked and killed by a 3-power 2-drop. And so that's the reason we kind of have this split of spells over here in the end. And then with the only 2 copies of Bloody Business, there's not a lot of high-powered targets if we aren't trying to kill Jannas. And so if our idea is that we're going to be playing best of 3, not playing against stuff like Janna, then the Bloody Business doesn't have as many ultra-relevant targets because there's just not a ton of must-kill units in this format. And so, that's it. That is the deck we're doing battle with today. I checked in on the pay-to-win price, and we are all paid up. This deck is fully premium, as it should be. I like these kind of cards. I feel kind of bad talking trash about the other deck builders out there, but we've played a couple games with this bad boy when you come out and all the cards are premium in it. So it feels good. Let's see if we get some good games in today. I'm sure we'll just play against Janna all day. And so everybody's seen my Janna Demacia deck pop out. They all want to play with the elusives and the champion strengths now. And so let's see if we can't dodge the beast. All right, up to battle against Illaoi Swain. That's not a Swain, Illaoi Jarvan. My bad. And so reasonable enough start up through our early game stuff here. We are on the odds, and so I'm fine enough to hang on to the Omen Hawk into the Glory Seeker into the LeBlanc. We would like to pick up a little bit of interactivity here, but it's not going to be super relevant at this stage of the game. One of the things I would kind of call out, though, is if we are on the even attacks, I would not be super interested in hanging on to LeBlanc. Her coming down and not attacking until turn 5 is not really the strategy we'd be looking to pull off. I'd want more early game stuff. I'd want more interactivity, but being on the odds, this turn 3 attack can be quite good. All right, Broadwing. I'm happy enough to trade our 2-cost Glory Seeker with a 2-cost Broadwing. It's very easy to kind of get in this mindset of oh my gosh, I don't want to trade the Glory Seeker. I can have so many good combats with the flash freezes and stuff. But if you kind of get out of that and start to think to yourself, am I willing to trade my 2-mana unit for our opponent's 2-mana unit? Then sure, it doesn't sound nearly as bad. Coming in and making a trade with the Broadwing. That's how I assume opponent will feel as they're sitting here thinking about playing Tentacle Smash onto LeBlanc, is am I willing to trade my 3-power card for my opponent's 3-power card? Probably should be. Or 3-cost card, I should be saying. But looks like it doesn't come down. Our LeBlanc is free to attack. Let's see what we can do. Single combat, sure thing. all around pretty reasonable stuff. Look at that, Assessor coming in. Not entirely certain if we'll want to play it. This is one of these spots to where the opponent can have very relevant targets for the likes of Bloody Business, but now that he's played the Watchful Idol, nothing too crazy is going to come down this turn. So let's just go ahead and drop the Assessor. We'll get a draw 2 off of it. We can continue to build up board next turn with a Glacial Saurion. I'm starting to feel pretty good about this game. Let's see. You can't play Illaoi this turn. Like, Illaoi is the kind of main point of interest here in the sense that she has 6 health and we can't just kill her with our 5 power units. We do have access to the Sky Splitter to get a bonus point of attack, but you know, no guarantees there. Just really messes with our mana if we want to try and take that plan.
Let us meet dark skies with bright souls. I'll cut them apart. You're mine.
All right. Well, I'm fine to put a big hit into the Tentacle. We're gonna get, you know, trades onto the Buru Lookout and a big hit on the Tentacle. This is fine. We should be able to get a unit down fast enough to get the Bloody Business into the Tentacle, and then oh shit, our Glory Seeker just survived. I was like, I forgot that we were attacking a 0 power unit there, but I felt like we were going to be pretty safe in terms of getting these units down. Now, where did our Archer go? Go? Don't want a big scary Illaoi attack happen in this turn. Still brings the attack, interesting. Alright, ball block. I'm happy to put big chunks of damage onto her. She's a pretty free hook for the Glory Seeker next turn as well, and so happy to see that kind of thing. This is gonna... this is not gonna feel good, my friend. This is not gonna feel good. Alright, and so fresh question with this upcoming turn is we do have the Incisive Tactician now. We can get a rally out of this turn if we want. Is it going to be worthwhile, though? That's kind of questionable. We're only going to hit for 6, take him down to 12, and then he can just add another big unit to the board. I'm leaning more towards just adding the big Frostcoat Cub, and then we can take this a little bit slower. But the other kind of angle of interest here is we do have Flash Freeze in hand, and what we can look to do is have a Flash Freeze banked up for next turn, and then just play a Naka. And so with something like that, we could just be, say, attacking for 6 and dropping a Frostcoat Cub and taking a 3 bank. I don't think I'm really sold on that. Don't think I'm sold. It's kind of tough for him to have another big unit, right? I mean, he can play like a defensive Jarvan here, fine. But outside of that, there's not a ton of good units he can play here. He's already spent 1 Illaoi. So if he just has a second Illaoi, fine. But that's pretty dangerous to just be dropping her on board. And I'm still pretty content to just smash her for a ton of damage this turn as well. Right, just having her hanging out with 1 health leaves her pretty susceptible to death, you know? That's a reasonable spot for the opponent's Illaoi to be. Susceptible to death. I mean, is this turn even worth a Harsh Winds? Like, we get the kill onto Illaoi, which is big, but then we can just drop a Naka. And I really like the idea of putting a Nakas down on this board. So let's just take it. Get some of those rallies everybody's talking about, you know? Now, the fresh question to me is, do we want to just start taking open attacks? Like, this is such a good LeBlanc in the sense that we can start getting the full combo going. I think we're safe to add her in. It's just like we have everything.
Why spoil the surprise?
Literal everything. We've got it. Feels good. Feels good, man. You could just throw a dart at a card in our hand and make an argument for that being the play for the turn. So that's a pretty decent spot to be in. So we want to let this attack happen first, and then we can just flash freeze the tentacle in combat. The downside to flash freeze is we can't follow up with an incisive tactician, but you can just alter course and do this way with the bloody business. The problem with bloody business is it has some failure opportunities here, to where if he has a combat trick or something, it's going to be problematic.
Away with you. You face a prince.
You face a prince. Rip Jarvan.
I am everywhere. I am everyone.
Alright, GG. And so yeah, this is this is one of these spots to where, as we're coming up to the open, I suspect that the majority of the lineups that we're going to be facing
One step closer.
are going to have a Janna deck, they're going to have a Warden of the Tribes deck, and then they're going to have a third deck. And, it's not something you're going to run into every single matchup, but I wouldn't be surprised if we play 10 matches on the day, if 5 of the matches contained that lineup, as to where it's a Janna deck, a Warden of the Tribes deck, and a third deck. And this deck is quite good against that situation, in the sense that it's a positive matchup against Warden of the Tribes, and then a lot of those third decks, whether or not you're looking at something like Jax Ornn, if you're looking at an Illaoi deck, if you're looking at just kind of any of these unit-based combat-y kind of things, then we have a pretty decent spot. The places to where it gets kind of weak, there's going to be things like Heimerdinger Jayce. This is not a particularly strong match by any stretch, and then things like the Nidalee deck are kind of problematic. But I think that when you're taking a deck like this, it's just very polarized, in the sense that it has a lot of really good matchups and it has a lot of bad matchups, but doesn't have anything in between. That when you're in that space of playing against Warden of the Tribes and then like a 45% win rate matchup, or in the next match you play against Warden of the Tribes, but then you have like another 60% win rate matchup, it makes me feel pretty decent, in the sense of bringing a deck like this, to where I typically don't like ones that are just so polarized like this. But at the end of the day, a lot of it kind of comes down to whether or not you will be facing how off the wall people are going to go. Like, I assume everybody's going to have a Janna deck, but then do you play like Janna and a Heimerdinger Jayce and then another control deck? That starts to be, problematic, but
History.
I don't think that's going to be the majority of the matches we play. F. This is kind of the downside to the removal suite we're bringing, right? Or I'm sorry, the interactivity suite. If you are playing in a format to where you're planning on playing against a lot of P and Z, then you're probably going to look to start including things like Elixir of Iron as tools to fight against the damage-based removal spells. But we're really bringing in our idea to this format, in the sense that
I need just a moment.
we're just going to be banning out the only P and Z deck, and so I've left the Elixir of Irons at home. Let's see how this goes. Another thing to kind of call out with the Saurion, this is just a good unit, right? It's a 5-attack overwhelm unit that's very challenging to kill. It's just all around a good unit, and it's okay to play it without getting the draw bonus off of it. You don't have to be like, oh man, I don't have a bird on board, so I'm not getting the draw. It's still just a really powerful unit, especially as we get this opportunity to say, roll into next turn and draw 2 off of the Assessor. So He's definitely who we're going to be playing right now.
I help when I can. Shut up when I can.
He still gets that bonus on the units, right? Just the world's biggest Omen Hawk. You just don't get to draw the card.
Remember me.
Sad Mystic Shot.
Only the finest serve.
It's something. We got a bird, right? It's something.
I'll do it myself.
Come on then.
Interesting block with the fancier onto the Saurion. You still get to just overwhelm for 4. You know, wouldn't be. It's like whenever you see something like that, I'm kind of motivated to just go ahead and play the Sky Splitter in the middle of combat. Because he's gonna just start raining Mystic Shots down on this unit, right? The only reason you would make that block is because you plan on Mystic Shotting or Aftershocking or something onto the Saurion. And, like, if you know they're gonna do it, let's just get that extra point of damage in, right?
If it's
So,
a people problem, I'm your man.
it's one of those thoughts I have.
Not a kingdom.
But, big time combat here. Incisive Tactician says, "What up? I'm ready to rally." I'm curious with the Incisive Tactician. In the variety patch, the Dragon Rally unit got updated, and I've never really been impressed with it. Like, I guess it's kind of just a function of being in Demacia and being like, well, I'm playing Demacia today. I just have access to Champion Strength and Golden Aegis. I don't need to play this dumb Dragon unit. But it's like the more I play with Incisive Tactician, I'm just kind of like, that unit is probably the real deal. But it doesn't get very much respect. I've certainly talked a lot of trash about it. And so I'm curious if it's not a little bit better than we're giving it credit. Interesting quietus. Why?
I'll show you how it's done.
Still keep sending the squad though. Oh wow. He doesn't go after the tactician, he goes for the value block on the assessor. And then doesn't have a vengeance? I'm very confused, fam. I'm very confused. That's a big scrap traption. I give you that. Alright. What are the chances that we just win the game right here? Well, we need we need it to be effective. That's for certain. Do we ever just get away with one though? Like, say he puts his scrap trap in front of the Saurion and then tries to vengeance the Incisive Tactician, and then we maybe find ourselves in a spot to where we get to double bloody business the scrap trap and deal the overwhelm damage. Oof, just doesn't have it. Nice, nice. Feels good. All right, racking up those victories feels good. That's not a particularly strong match. The presence of Heimerdinger Jayce most certainly worries me as we're looking to come into the open. All right, we can hang on to the birds. The triple bird, look out! 3 of a kind rolling through. You just build your own 5 attack unit. Am I right? Just build your own. Alright, he's playing Renekton Sejuani. This is the Shuriman version of the Warden of the Tribes deck. Alright. Get that next unit with the +3/+3. I'm excited to see what it is. Darkened Spear. Darkened Spear is not the unit. This is fine. We'll get the dog on board. The common play here is going to be like a weapon master, and so he'll still be able. He should still be able to have a pretty positive combat this turn, even if opponent plays a unit. Got a 4/2 quick attack. We're never gonna find that unit, are we? It's just, I don't want anything to do with this. So what happens if he has an exhaust, right? That's gonna be the problematic card. I think we just have to pass here. These harsh winds, like, this is not the turn I really want to be playing harsh winds, but we might have to. If he's going to exhaust the Frostcoat Cub, we're just in such a bad spot at that point. Not the way I was expecting that to go. Now the harsh winds is much more appealing, given that we get the kill onto the blacksmith. Still not great, right? We don't have a good attack into Renekton here, but getting to take the unit off the board feels pretty good. What a monster. What a monster of a Trifarian Glory Seeker. look at my massive stat line, Renekton. You thought you were a challenger, huh? Check this shit out. biggest stats 2023 Trifarian Glory Seeker coming in. I dig it. I like it. Pretty big Ice Veil Archer as well. Just build your own reputation units, right? So I think we want to save this Ice Veil Archer for next turn. We should be okay just to add a Frostcoat Cub, right? We can soak the 5 off of the Raptor. If he's got another exhaust, then the Frostcoat Mother still at least gets the trade. I don't want to just block. I want to be like on the offense with this Frostcoat Mother, but if the opponent has stuff that's going to cause problems, it should still be safe. Okay. Now LeBlanc. Sure, we'll slap her down first. I'd like to save this Harsh Winds for next turn. You know, he's building up into his Warden of the Tribe's turn, and if we can stop his Overwhelm units from actually dealing damage, then we're going to feel pretty good about it. Like these little dumb defenders of the Sun Discs are going to have a bunch of stats, but they're not going to actually kill us. So, gotta stop and do a mathematic. That's probably 15. Let's just put LeBlanc at the end. 15. A little bit extra. Okay. Looks fine. Did a lot of good high quality mathematics right there. You wonder how you get to the top of the ladder. You start counting to 15 and you say that's enough. That should get the job done. But I think this attack is pretty close to optimal anyways. We want the LeBlanc towards the end. We want the LeBlanc out on the right so that she has the most opportunities to flip. Like, she's going to flip here and not die. She's going to have 4 health. But with this style of attack, I think, I guess if one of our units to the left doesn't deal damage, then the Frostcoat Cub damage isn't going to matter. So, at the end of the day, LeBlanc to the right feels pretty good. Rally time. So if he plays Warden of the Tribes here, we most certainly win the game. Like if he plays Warden and attacks, and then we get to do stuff. That's the explanation we needed, right? We get to do stuff, but we need to get a combat hit in, right? And so we need someone to come in and strike in this combat to give us the reputation on the Tactician. If we're not going to get it, how much do we care? I think this is still just fine. We lose the LeBlanc, but We can play the Tactician, and then we can mirror image the Tactician after this combat. He shouldn't have any way to kill it. So we're going to attack with everybody. Is that right? Like, we're most certainly hooking Sejuani with the Glory Seeker. Like, there's no way that's not happening. Okay. It's like he's starting to play some units that are strong against our units, though. I want to be able to attack with everybody twice, but wasn't quite certain how those were going to come together. Hi, GG. Oof. Feeling good. Feeling good. Man, how many of you all have managed to get the buy for the for the open? It has been such a grind. Like I know that I always forget that you need to come out and grind, and this season I was just kind of like, we'll just grind out the Ruthless Rumbles and that'll get us there, since they switched it up to where you could buy in as many times as you want. And it was still just like not enough. You forget how long it takes to sit around and just play through those things. And I was just kind of like, well, you know, a gauntlet takes like 2 hours. And so if I get to play like 2 of these a day over the course of 4 days, that's 8 of them. And then if I'm getting like 15 trophies out of each of these, then that should be like 120. And then we're pretty close. And like those mathematics just did not work. Did not work whatsoever. And I just felt so super far behind in terms of like getting it done. And now I'm like, fuck, I do actually have to play so many of these gauntlets to actually get our day up and running. And I think I'm gonna get there. But man, like, it has to be just so challenging for the average person to try and pull off. Because like I know how much I grind, and I have to be like well into that top 1% of grinding way too much of your life away. And so like I have to feel like that if I'm feeling the heat, if I'm feeling the pressure in terms of being able to get to that buy, then not very many other people are going to have been successful. Hey, an Ashe turns up. She should be a safe attack the whole way through, right?
All the world on one arrow.
So opponent like plays Renekton, we attack, she freezes Renekton, and then the Frostcoat Cub's the only way to take Ashe down. Now, she does die to a lot, right? She dies to a Ruthless Predator, Renekton flips into Ruthless Predator and stuff, but I don't think I care, you know? Our curve just looks so good in the sense that if next turn we play Raptor into the following turn playing Assessor Glory Seeker, that if this goes wrong, it just feels like one of these spots to where opponent, you know, spent a bunch of mana not doing relevant stuff, and it just doesn't matter. Now, it is a bit unfortunate having that one, having the Sky Splitter to where the unit gets to survive. It's now, you know, like a favorable block onto this Assessor just to prevent all the damage, but I think I was still pretty okay with how that branched itself out. And quite relevant here if he wants to get aggro on the Innovative Blacksmith. We managed to pick up the Fixin' 5000 for the quick attack. Turns out the quick attacking Glory Seekers are pretty good. And so we have good targets for this stuff next turn if he does get involved with the Innovative Blacksmith. Renekton bringing the heat though. So I want to be blocking. We definitely want to get this dude down. How much do we care about Renekton, though? I don't think he's a big deal. Famous last words, probably, but we should have just like a pretty good set of attacks next turn, right? We can add the Omen Hawk, we can add the Glory Seeker, we can add the Pioneer, and then we can look to put the quick attack in the most relevant place, probably on the Glory Seeker, right? We can Pioneer into the Frostcoat Cub and have it not die. Now in these spots, I do typically just go for the Quicksand. This is a very common matchup to where the only Overwhelm unit the opponent's going to have is like a Warden of the Tribes. And if they do get that big Warden of the Tribes turn, they typically just can't kill you. Gives you a chance to cycle into the next turn and maybe get to do something fun with a
Victory requires a sharp blade.
like Ashe and an unblockable attack or something.
I'll cut them apart. Face me.
You know, just come out there and do something fun. That's what it's all about, right? Sky Splitter, sure thing. He's definitely building up into the Warden. I would assume the way this has gone, he's probably already got it in hand. There's not anything we can really do about it, but with him really making the effort to protect these smaller units, I would assume it's just going to come down next turn. Maybe we shouldn't have thrown our Ashe away like that and just saved her for the late game here. Probably should have blocked. It's just like a spot to where if he has a combat trick, our unit just dies. But I think if he has the combat trick, we're just dead anyways. Right? Now him getting to play Warden and boosting the Saurion is going to be pretty detrimental. I think we've got to pivot just a moment. We can get out of this next turn. He's not going to kill us here. So I'm looking to play the Icevale Archer, and then I'm going to play the Trifarian Assessor, draw 4 cards, see if we can't build up into an Ashe. And then on this next turn, I mean, we can Harsh Winds as 2 biggest plays. And so we have some opportunity to not die, right? We hit the Saurion, we hit the Warden of the Tribes, and we're not really out here dying and stuff. It's a bonus to life, you know, not dying and stuff. Now with that, do we want to spend any of these bloody businesses? I don't think we do.
For glory, you're mine.
Like, this should just be good enough, taking his big unit off of the board. Okay. Seems reasonable, right? Seems reasonable. I don't know, man. It should take him like an hour to kill us, and so I think that's fairly positive. So let's see. Like the things we want to be doing, we're gonna flash freeze 2 units, right? I'm still leaning towards looking at the Saurion and the Warden of the Tribes, and then we can block them and just put a bunch of damage on them. And so that'll get us in this spot next turn to where we can still make good hooks with the Glory Seeker, right? So I'm looking to like hit these 2 dum-dums. That certainly feels good.
I know a challenge when I see one.
And block out here on these. Then we could start to do some bloody businessing. I guess the risky thing here is if we go for the bloody business and then he has a combat trick, then we're just dead. Right? So we go for the kill onto the defender, he gives it bonus health, or he flash freezes the Glory Seeker or plays a Quicksand or something. I think we got to play another trick here. So let's flash freeze. And then that'll give us reputation after this attack, though, so we can start to bloody business on the cheap. We're getting there. We're getting there. As long as we aren't running into a second Warden, things are okay. Or if we draw an Ashe, we can OTK. Neither thing happened. Alright, so I'm going to add in Anaka. She's easy enough to protect here with these bloody businesses. So I feel reasonable
I'll cut them apart.
trying to just soak up some more stats on this board here.
You're mine.
That's not ideal. No, I didn't want to see that. Alright, so I'm going to play 2 Bloody Businesses. I'm going to spread it across different units, though. If he's got another Harsh Winds, we're just fucked anyways. But this way, if he has a Quicksand, he can't Quicksand both of our units down and stop these. Oh. Oh. Sad noise. we're pretty fucked at this point. I don't think we're dead. Maybe we are dead. Maybe we are dead. Looks like it. There's Ashe. Well, Ashe, I failed you this game, Ashe. I think that was a good learning experience for me in the sense that, you know, a lot of times I'll look at these spots in these games and you'll see us talking like, say with the Trifarian Glory Seeker, as to where it's like I try to get in the mindset to where I'm like, okay, well, I'm trading my 2-drop for your 2-drop, right? And so it's very easy to like know the big plays you can do with your Trifarian Glory Seeker. Like you could see in that game the big things we're doing with it. It's like you get to flash freeze the opponent's unit, you hook it down, and then on the next turn you get to bloody business off of the Glory Seeker, and then on the next turn you get to play the card draw dude and draw an extra card because of it. And then we put a quick attack equipment on it. Like that Trifarian Glory Seeker did a lot that game. And so it's very easy to get into this mindset to where you're saying to yourself, okay, I know all the big things that the Trifarian Glory Seeker can do. I'm not willing to trade my 2-mana Glory Seeker for my opponent's 2-mana Petricite Broadwing. And I think a lot of the times, you know, it's easy to kind of big brain yourself out of those trades when they're the reasonable ones. Now, what happened in that game was we got into that mindset with Ashe. Like, I'm typically pretty okay with that kind of stuff, especially if we're in the sense to where it's like, well, I'm trading for not only like the same mana value, right? We're trading for, say, an Ashe and then a dog and a Ruthless Predator, so we're also going up +1 card, but then we're also getting tempo on our opponent to where they want to be playing their units on curve, and we're taking that away from them because he wants to trade for the Ashe. And so it feels like a lot more than you're getting just out of that trade, and I typically feel okay with it in that sense, but I think at the end of the day, as we're playing against these Warden of the Tribes decks, you can see games pan out like that, right? A lot of that game's game plan went exactly how we wanted, right? We controlled the board pretty well. He built up to the Warden of the Tribes. He didn't have the Overwhelm units to come in and crush the game. We took the Overwhelm away from the Warden, so we only had one, and we knew we weren't going to die. And then we also had that hand where we had double Harsh Winds, like a Brittle Steel and a Flash Freeze. And if we can just take that turn and be like, okay, well, if I just get to stop like one unit here, we can literally flash freeze his entire team next turn and kill with Ashe. And I think I needed to get my head kind of like flipped back around, right? Flipped out of that like mid-game tempo value play kind of thing and get my head into that space to where the only way we're beating a Warden of the Tribes is with Ashe. And we need to play some of these weaker plays in the mid-game to ensure that we have her in the late game. I think that was just a failure of game planning there. So, worth noting, worth remembering. Got to get more reps in. All right, let's get one last game in. We're at the 45-minute mark. Let's see what we can do. All right, this one's gonna be a painful one. We're gonna struggle against the Seraphine removal pile, and so it's like I'm half tempted to just like hang on to LeBlancs and be like, yeah, we got to have something go right. But this is going to be a real struggle. Like these harsh winds we just drew are going to be dead. He doesn't have any units that care about it until like turn 9. And these Glory Seekers die to literally everything in their deck. And so we're definitely not tuned to deal with this. Look at that, even has the shutdown on the Glory Seeker. Ugh. Alright. Let's just save some time. Let's just move on to the next one. This game's so done. This game's so done. Alright. This one will be the final battle. We're just gonna queue right back into Yang Zera. Here, let's give this 15 seconds. I don't want to just auto requeue into him. All right. It's interesting. I was talking to a person the other day, getting into a draft thing, and it's kind of like, what are the things that separate you from as being a strong player in the draft style of events as opposed to someone that's strong at constructed? And the stuff that Yang Zera has been doing is just like the ultimate like point to that. I've played against Yang Zera a dozen times over the course of the past week, and literally every single time it's been against Janna, except for this last match to where it was up against, of course it's someone we've already played again. But in this last match, it was the Seraphine deck. But that's one of the kind of interesting things in terms of constructed is I bet, you know, if I get to play 300 games in preparation for an event, I'm going to have a lot of matchups that aren't, you know, potentially that relevant as I try to come out and create content and play different matches and different games across the courses of the days. But if you wanted to ask someone about like the real nitty gritty fine points of the any of the matchups with Janna, like Yang Zera just has to be able to tell you. Like he's played literally hundreds of the games with that deck up to this point. And that's what's kind of interesting about getting into a space like Worlds or getting into a space like the actual upcoming Open is if you just, you know, want to really get your practice in, you're going to be in a much better space. Say like if you're going to get to play 500 games, then you probably want to be playing like 350 of them with the actual decks that you'll be playing. And then, you know, you can go out and branch out a little bit, get the other deck's perspective or try some flyers and stuff with those other games. But it's very interesting, the space that you can get in there. Now with this, we're going to find ourselves in this exact same thing as that last game, aren't we? Is to where we just run our Ashe out, just throw her away into some combat tricks and see how it goes. But no, like on the flip side though, in playing draft, you know, if you are going to have your 500 games of draft for the season, and you devote or you want to devote all of your games to one particular deck, there's a very real chance that with any draft that you jump into, that deck you want to play just may not actually be available, right? That champion you want may not actually turn up. And so it's very interesting in points of comparison to what it takes to be at that really top tier in constructed, in the sense that you really need that fine understanding of a very limited number of matchups, as to where draft, you know, if you practice Janna all day and then never see Janna, you're gonna be hurting.
The time is right. Strike now.
All right, let's see if that combat trick comes down now. Nope, we're just getting the best of it. That feels pretty good. The big thing with that combat as well is we got that Renekton down to brittle steel range. And so we can probably get the lethal this turn. Let's see how we can go about this. Like, I'm going to lead off with the Omen Hawk, and then I'm going to follow up with the Ice Veil Archer, and I think we can double brittle steel and just get the OTK. He will be in a spot to where, again, if he plays a combat trick, you can recover the health on your unit. But, I mean, if we look at how this game has gone, he had a very compelling reason to play a combat trick into Ashe 2 turns ago, and he didn't do it. And then on that last turn, he had a very compelling reason to play a combat trick into Ashe, and he didn't do it. And so I feel like, you know, we're just going to have kind of a prime opportunity here in terms of actually going for one of these combats. Now, with the 2/2 Lonely Poro, I'm not as amped about it. So we double flash freeze. Let's just check this out real quick. He gets to block our Ashe, and then we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. We've got lethal. Okay. What the fuck?
As the arrow flies.
All right. I'll take it.
My aim is true.
My aim is true. So right, I'm gonna swing with everybody. Ashe will flash freeze the defenders of the Sun Disk down here to the left. His only blocker should be the Lonely Poro. And then again, it should be very challenging for him to actually have the combat trick to get involved here. Like, it's just so tough for me to imagine that he went those 2 turns without killing Ashe, and then now just magically has the combat trick to stop the OTK. All right. Good set of games, though. Good set of battles. We can pull this up, talk about it a little bit more. And so I feel like we hit, you know, a lot of the highlights of the deck. You know, we got a lot of these really mid-range kind of games in. We got to really see kind of the showcase of the power of the unit boosting and the usage of Glacial Saurion in this kind of space. We didn't get to make any of the big mirror image kind of plays, but we did at least come up with a couple spots to where we indicated you could be mirror imaging an Incisive Tactician or something. And so all in all, again, I'm pretty happy with how this has played out. I do have this tuned to where we don't plan to play against Janna. We're just going to ban Janna all the time, and so the PNZ nonsense shouldn't be as relevant, and that's really kind of dialed in here with some of our choices within the deck. Now, as far as those games go, it didn't really get as wide of a net as I wanted to in terms of some of the other kind of like third deck matchups I expect to see. And where I'm kind of wanting to go with that is just in terms of how we feel about this Scholarly Pioneer. And to me, the main reason I'm playing these Scholarly Pioneers are some of those, you know, fringe decks that we're going to be seeing in best of 3, namely the Annie decks. And so I like having access to the Scholarly Pioneer against Annie, the Annie Wildfire decks, I should say. And then it just gives us like such a large piece of interactivity that also comes in and gains a little bit of health. But, you know, as far as these games went today, I didn't really feel like we needed the Pioneer too many times. But it is, you know, a very good target for things like Darkened Spear. It gives us a lot of good hooks. I think we got at least 1 or 2 hooks in with the Pioneer earlier. And so maybe we look to just cut it back 1 copy. And then look to get in like another piece of interactivity or something. I don't know. I need to get a little bit more reps in with the deck before I make these kind of final decisions. But I'm really happy with pretty much everything here, except these Pioneers did not really impress against the Warden of the Tribes decks. And that's where I think that we're really going to be playing the majority of our matches. And so we did get to do the what's it called, the quicksand thing against the Warden of the Tribes. But if that's all we're getting it for, would we rather just play another flash freeze or something is kind of the question, or how are we going about it there? But otherwise, good set of games. I had fun with that. I hope you did too, because that is going to do it for us today. So I hope everyone enjoyed the video. I hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way, and you had a good time watching. So this is Bust, and we thank you for being here.